7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's Gucci, fam? This Que Bola, the podcast for creative entrepreneurs who want to understand the individuals winning in the creative industry and want to learn how to attain success in their own pursuits. My name is Darwin Figueroa, and my mission is to help you, the creative entrepreneur, find a roadmap to grow and succeed in your own endeavors. We share stories, insights, and tips from established and emerging creative entrepreneurs so you can attain success in your own pursuits. This week's episode, Debris-Free Oceans. They're on a mission to protect our oceans and inspire the world without waste. Volunteer-run organization dedicated to empowering communities to rethink single-use plastics and foster a circular economy. From education to cleanups and from sustainability consulting to policy reform, they're tirelessly creating a future where our oceans are free from debris. Let's get into it. It was a dope talk. Thank you so much, Caiti Waks. Without further ado, let's get into it, all right? Listo. So, in another episode of the Que Bola podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. It's your boy D Fig. On today's episode, we have nonprofit organizer for the oceans, Caiti Waks.
Are we starting?
Yeah.
Oh, this is
Yeah.
Okay.
Straight, cold intro.
Okay. Hello.
Did I say your name right?
Yes, Caiti Waks.
All right. So, Caiti, you're introduced to me through one of the guests of the podcast, Mr. Otaso. Shout out Miami Creation Myth. Shout out Andrew Otaso and all the great things that he does for the city. He introduced me to you as a nonprofit, right? That you primarily focus on spending a lot of the time currently on trying to fix the oceans, trying to help us with oceans. Fill in the gaps for me. How does that work?
Yeah, so we are empowering Miami-Dade communities to go zero waste.
Okay.
So what is zero waste? Basically, it's an aspirational idea where we live in a world without waste. And we reduce our consumption of unnecessary commodities. We reuse the commodities that are in circulation. We repair items that break so that we don't have to keep consuming new things all the time. We recapture waste from landfills or the environment to use as new raw materials for things, essentially curbing the amount of resources, virgin resources that we have to take out of the planet and consume and then discard, which is a very linear way of consuming things. We want to turn that into a circular economy where anything that's taken out from the earth we reduce that as much as possible and we keep those resources in circulation for as long as possible without discarding it so much.
Okay. I mean, that sounds very. How can I put it to you? I hear you. I hear everything you're saying. It all sounds really good. It does.
That's why it says aspirational.
Okay. All right. So tell me about how did you fall into this? I'm sure maybe you were born a hippie. I'm not sure. You know what I'm saying? But how did you get here? How did you make this your life mission? What is it that makes you want to raise funds to to do this? I mean, because that's everything you said sounds really good, but it sounds hard pressed, right? So it's like you're taking on this massive challenge.
Yeah.
So what made you? It has to be something driving you there.
Yeah, totally. Well, I grew up on the water.
Okay.
And loving nature.
Here in South Florida?
In South Florida. I'm from Stuart, Florida.
Okay, all right.
Which is about 2 hours north of here.
Is that South Florida?
Central South Florida.
Okay,
it's right where you start
Boca?
getting into more farm country Florida.
Okay.
You're outside the city by the time
Definitely.
you're hitting Stuart.
Okay.
In Martin County.
All right.
So I grew up there. My mom was a really big fisherwoman.
Yeah.
So I would go out fishing with her a lot on the weekends. And one of my favorite things ever was jumping off the boat in the deep sea and swimming around in the blue bubbles that would just kind of encapsulate me. And I became obsessed with the ocean. And then I went to school and I had an experience when in high school. I went to Nicaragua,
Okay.
and there's a massive garbage dump in Nicaragua, and we drove. We were
Where,
in a
Managua?
bus. Yeah, right on Lake Managua, I think,
Oh,
on the
okay.
side. And we literally were in a school bus, and we were driving into the landfill, and I mean far, 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 like it's huge.
Yeah.
And there were tons of families living on this landfill. They had built a school on the landfill.
Yeah.
People were literally, there was like a lake in the middle of the landfill, and people were on like a hill of the garbage. This is all garbage.
Yeah.
Jumping off the garbage into the lake,
Yeah.
swimming around, and
Yeah.
it
And
really,
you don't know what it was.
and it will just
Yeah.
kind of shocked me that there could be so much waste in
Oh.
an area, and
Yeah.
you know that there is no way when you're throwing things away, right?
Yeah.
So it's
There's
going
no imaginary
somewhere,
place.
and it's going to impact someone or something. We like to think, oh, I just threw that away,
Yeah.
and it goes and it poof vanishes, gone. That would be wonderful, but that's
Yeah.
not the case. So anyway, that kind of stuck with me, and then I was actually really into like theater and drama, and then I read this book in high school called Ocean's End,
Okay.
and it went through like all the issues the ocean was suffering, and I was like, oh my God, like I have to change my entire trajectory of my life. Like I have to save the ocean. That
This
has
was
to
in
be
high
my
school?
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
And so at that time, my high school, and now I was in Miami. I moved to Miami in seventh grade.
Okay.
I was at Palmer Trinity School. I don't
Okay.
know if you know.
Private school.
Yeah, I was
Big
at
money.
private school.
I hear that. I went to South Ridge. I don't know about that. I went to the hood school, but I knew Palmer Trinity people.
We were cool. We were
Yeah,
bad
yeah,
at
yeah.
sports, but
100%.
we were nerds
Yeah.
trying to save the environment.
I hear that.
So I started the first environmental club there,
Yeah.
and my first crusade, I guess, was they used styrofoam plates in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And so I recruited all my friends and my teachers to bring their own bowls to the school, so we wouldn't be throwing away so many plates and things like that.
Yeah.
And I had kids being like, "Oh, I'm gonna take 2 plates, so you're not even doing anything." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay." Like,
Yeah.
there's always adversity, right, when you're
100%.
trying to make change. But ultimately, the school ended up getting rid of all of their disposables and implementing a reusable system at the school. And they're actually the first school in Miami-Dade County to go plastic free,
No, it's good.
which is pretty cool. I'm like, oh, my little bowl experiment.
So you actually did make
Did
change.
something.
Yeah.
So then I went to University of Miami for undergrad, and I did ecosystem science and policy and political science, and I did various science initiatives, but realized I'm really more of an advocate type person.
Yeah.
So I decided I think I want to go to law school. And I took a philosophy of law morality class that basically taught me like law is just a reflection of culture, right?
Mhm.
Like whatever the culture believes, then the
Yeah.
law kind of follows that. So I was like, okay, I want to be a culture influencer
Mm-hmm.
to help the environment.
Yeah.
And I went to, when I was in law school, I did a stint in the Bahamas helping this island called Long Island implement a marine protected area, which is basically helping the community determine areas in the ocean nearby that they wanted protected from fishing or
Yeah.
from different extractive things. And while we were walking on the beach one night, we were all tripping over all this stuff, and we're like, "Whoa, there's so many rocks!" Like, here.
I thought you were
Like,
gonna
this
say
is
we're all
crazy.
tripping acid.
Oh, would have
You're
been
like, I'm
cooler.
tripping. We were all tripping.
a lot
I was
cooler
like,
if you
what?
did.
In Bahamas? Okay.
We were tripping on rocks,
Not
but
acid.
then I took out my flashlight
Yeah.
to be like, okay, let's Let's like not fall on our face.
Yeah.
And it wasn't rocks.
It was all garbage.
Tons of garbage.
Yeah.
On this tiny island, they weren't producing this garbage, it was just washing up. And I was like, okay, this garbage problem is a huge problem. And
Yeah.
I was really into like surfing and water sports and just noticing like how much trash I was like sticking in all my bathing suits
Yeah.
and
Like trying to collect the trash.
yeah, like while surfing. So yeah, so anyway, then I was like, I don't know, am I rambling too much?
No,
Okay.
I get it. No, you're telling me
Okay.
your backstory of how like you got here. But the thing is like, okay, throughout the story, I'm thinking to myself like, you're actually implementing change because you're being able to follow through with the ideas that you wanted and the morals that you like, the values that really draw you to this type of work. But how do you? I myself I'm a lover of the seas, right? I'm a diver. I love being in the water, and I like that whole like jumping in the water with the bubbles. All of that resonates with me.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like this world that we currently are living in, it feels like it's hopeless. Like it feels like this message I want to champion, and that's why I bring you onto the podcast and people such as yourself. I like to give like that platform, right? Because people need to hear, we got to change. We got to take the plastics out of the oceans. We got to clean up. We got to stop with like one-use plastics and all this other stuff. But at the same time, the way that this consumer economy works, I feel like there's no encaja. You know what that means? Like it doesn't go together. There's no way that you could. It feels like you would have to step into another universe or in another dimension to be able to like implement all the change that's really required for us to like not basically kill ourselves, right? For us to go extinct.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things to say with that. One,
I'm sorry I'm being a Debbie Downer,
No,
but I'm just like,
I get it. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think you kind of have to have a little bit of that in you to do this type of thing. But one thing I would say is, look at where we are today and think of where we were 50, 100 years ago. There was
100 years ago, we were probably good.
Yeah, but there was no way you could have envisioned where we would be now.
Yeah, without doubt, yeah.
It may not happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's incremental change.
Mm-hmm.
But in 50 to 100 years, we're going to be a much different place. And as we're learning so much more about what specifically plastic is doing to our earth and to us.
Yeah.
Like they're finding plastic in brain, heart, blood, placenta. Babies are being born already exposed to plastic from their mother's placentas. Like we're finding out like this isn't good. We're finding out all the chemical additives in plastic. It's not good. And a lot of it is in the packaging of the food, that we're eating. So I think as that information gets out, we're gonna be demanding change. That's the question. Do you think us as a society, we have the backbone to demand the change? Yes, because it's growing. When I started to Breathe Free Oceans 10 years ago, no one was talking about this in Miami. It was not a thing. I would go to a restaurant and ask for no straw, and that was like a huge step forward. Now you go to a lot of places, they don't even have plastic straws, or they don't give any straw. You have to ask upon request. And that's just a small example, but you have Miami-Dade County putting together a zero waste master plan. Like, it's moving to go, and that's just in 10 years. So the thing with you're talking about with like being it's hopeless.
I'm not saying it's hopeless. Damn, sheesh.
I think you did say rewind.
I might have said it. I'm not gonna front. I might have said it's hopeless.
One thing that I've learned,
or it feels hopeless at least,
is you have to celebrate every win along the way.
The micro wins.
Yes. Okay. And you have to, great job.
Yeah.
And even as a parent, I do that. Like, I fed my kids breakfast today.
Yeah.
And then like
My kids didn't die today.
Hey, and then Miami-Dade County just passed a resolution that there should be no single-use plastics in county contracts.
Yeah.
So that's a huge win. So slowly but surely it happens. But yes, it's definitely something where if you don't look at the incremental change and you look at the big scope, it's totally overwhelming and daunting. And
I mean, the only reason that I feel that it's hopeless, not necessarily that it is hopeless, but it feels hopeless, is because capital drives the conversation. And
yes.
and in this capitalistic society that we are entrenched in, I don't foresee, like, for example, just this week, the president signed something about like, oh, we're going back to straws and no more, the straws are exploding or whatever he said, I'm not quoting him, but it's something along those lines. But like, all that's driven by capital, right? Like, we're seeing how like super rich, like oligarchic type of actions are being taken through the government, right? So it makes you like say, how are we gonna, the people who have no money, right? Because the people we're great in numbers, but we're not great at money, right? We're the consumers, but the capital is really driving the conversation, and they're doing things in a completely different manner, right? So like, how do you get China or how do you get India who's just growing their economy and trying to get to the United States type of like lifestyle? How do you get them to say, no, let's not take this oil out or get all this gas from Russia? Or, like basically it all starts with petroleum. That's where all the plastics come from, right? And even though like PFAS are all up in our blood system and all of that, it's still not, I don't foresee, or I see it hard pressed for like the population in general to push that change. That's what I'm saying. Like those type of, the changing of the narrative, I understand it, but the changing of the actions through capital, how do you foresee that happening?
So I feel like there's a lot of economic opportunity in sustainability. So, for example, there's global companies now that implement reuse systems at various scales. So
explain what reuse systems are.
Yeah, so reuse systems is like what I would envision like the dream to be, right? Like, so for example, you go to the Kasaya Center, which I will always think is the American Airlines Arena.
Yeah,
but
AAA.
I think this is the first time I've ever called that.
Kasaya. It's not even Kasaya. The people at Kasaya are like, yo, you're saying it wrong.
Yikes. And we're hoping that they implement reuse. So sorry for getting your name wrong, but hopefully you implement reuse. But anyway, so when you go there, instead of getting stuff that's, you can, like a cup of beer or whatever, and then you consume it and you throw it away, you're getting it in a reuse cup, you're putting it in a bin, and someone's washing that and restocking it. I mean, just like at any restaurant, they're actually piloting in the Downtown Development Authority area a reuse coffee cup program.
Okay.
So that would be where all of these different coffee places can sign on. You get actually like $1,000 for participating as a business. And you use a reusable coffee cup that then gets recollected back into the system, washed, redistributed to the coffee place, and then continues in circulation. And when you think of that, economically, there's a lot of business models that can be run around that. And then there's a lot of job opportunity for that. There's going to be people that need to collect those cups, that need to clean those cups, that need to redistribute them. And it's just shifting our business models from this linear model that we've gotten so used to a more circular model. But it's not saying, hey, stop consuming stuff. It's just saying, let's rethink how we're consuming this and let's do it in a more sustainable way. We actually piloted a reusable to-go-ware pilot in Coconut Grove. Okay. Where essentially you'd walk into a restaurant, you get your to-go order, but it's in a reusable container. You take it home, you eat it, and then you come back either to the restaurant or there's some place you can drop it off. Or this particular pilot, we had it where you actually could leave it at your door and someone came and picked it up for you.
I was about to say, if you don't make it convenient, that is not happening.
Well, another dream of mine would be to get Uber Eats on board with that. And then Uber Eats becomes the servicer where you can order from Uber Eats, say.
Yeah.
You order it in your reusable to-go container. It comes to you from Uber Eats in your container. You happen to already have a reusable container from when you ordered Uber Eats yesterday. You leave that one on the doorstep. So simultaneously when they're dropping off your new food, they're also collecting that old container.
Okay.
So it's just rethinking some logistics and finding, honestly, new revenue streams through different,
that's what I was going to say.
different.
I was going to say you would have to incentivize people, and normally financially is the incentive for people to, like, me as a Uber Eats consumer, for me to like keep the container to then turn it back in the next day, you would have to give me something for that. I'm not going to do that just because I want to save the earth.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's where the disconnect happens. It's like, okay, I'll do it if there's something in it for me. Yeah. Right? That's like that's basically the view right now. I mean, that's the view in general.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot of these reuse provider groups that say do reusable cups for venues and stadiums and things like that, they'll have some type of reward system built in, like say it's a Taylor Swift concert. They'll have, 300 signed, photographs of Taylor Swift. This is obviously the market of people that would want that. And so it's like if you return your container, you're entered into win one of those signed whatever. So again, it's being creative in that way to come up with different value adds for the consumer. There's another company, I forget their name, but they have a reward system as well where you get certain discounts for other partner brands or, discounts on your future orders, things like that. So it takes creativity, but I truly believe there is a lot of economic opportunity in rethinking these things, because a lot of the time, like if you're buying something that constantly has to be disposed of, like for example, one of the easiest implementable things is at a restaurant to not automatically give silverware with your to-go order. Mm-hmm. Like the restaurant saves money by not having to buy constant disposables, and you're not producing so much waste. It's a win-win. And so anything where you have to constantly continue buying something disposable over and over and over again, you're going to lose more money than if you have something reusable that maybe has a slightly larger upfront cost, but over time, the ROI is always going to be higher than if you're always buying that disposable. And we have case studies that demonstrate that.
But how do you get the consumer to not leave you a 1-star review because you didn't give them a fork and
We can have some signage demonstrating your commitment to the environment and why you're doing what you're doing. Most consumers now actually are demanding sustainability from the businesses that they frequent. I don't know the exact stat off the top of my head, but the last I checked, I believe it's over 80% of consumers actually want businesses to help them be more sustainable, because at a certain point, consumer choice is abutting against business offerings, right? Like you can only, as a consumer, go as far as what we have set up in the system, right?
So throughout your experience, so you started the debris-free oceans, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So throughout your 10 years, and I'm sure you were an activist prior to that. Mm-hmm. So throughout your experience and your time, are there certain
takeaways that have really been resounding that continuously show up, right? When you're talking about these, about implementing or attempting to get the goals done, right? Is there one or a couple of things that keep showing up? You're like, man, this is something that it's hard pressed to tackle.
Um, Hard pressed to tackle, like a barrier
Yeah,
that keeps coming up.
like an obstacle that keeps coming up.
The most challenging obstacle, I think, is, at least with when working with small business owners, is honestly the time and energy that a small business owner has to make a change, which we totally understand.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
It can be, implementing any type of change in a business. You own a business.
Yeah.
My husband owns a business. Can be a lot when you're dealing with your staff, you're dealing with your manager, you're dealing with the light broke, you're dealing with the dishwasher broke, there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's a lot to just even try to think about implementing a new initiative. But when we've worked with people who have implemented these initiatives, they're usually super enthusiastic about having done so. They get great feedback from the public. Again, like in the case of the reusables, always end up saving money. And with the reusables, we have partners that actually pay for businesses to purchase the reusables, so they don't even actually have to pay for the upfront cost. And that's if you're switching from disposables to reusables. So it always ends up working out well. But I'd say that's probably, I think kind of almost in a way that you're saying like, oh, this just feels like a lot,
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of our messaging tends to be, like starting small. Do like one little thing.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes what I tell people as the first thing to do, just like look at what you're throwing away. Like, don't even do anything. Just look at what you're throwing away. Is there something there that you think maybe you could replace? Is there something there that maybe you don't need? Or is there something there that, like, you can't do anything about? So, for example, like my kids love berries. I love berries.
Mm-hmm.
Berries are great. You go to the grocery store, they only come in plastic. So can I talk to the berry manufacturers and tell them, like, please stop packaging this in plastic? Talk to the grocery store. There's little actions you can take, and that all adds up. And I guess, collective action is so powerful. And I feel like one thing that's really surprised me with Debris Free Oceans, that like the mission has always been kind of focused on the environment and, reducing waste, but like this like sub mission has kind of like unfolded of just like building this incredible community of people, and like a community of people that are kind and generous and thoughtful and want to help others, want to help the earth. Like, that's what keeps me going all the time, is like these people that I've met through this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know, I feel like linking those types of people together is like a superpower, right? Like, all together, if people want to help change, they'll make it happen. I don't know.
How do you bridge the gap where I hear what you're saying, and it sounds good, and it is good that you're bringing that community together. But that seems to me to be like a certain type of community that I have the time to even think about that. I'm talking about the vast majority of our society is based on a community, like a whole entire class of people that don't have time to even think about, like, hey, how do I fix this oceans? Because they think about, hey, how do I pay this light so I don't freeze? Or how do I pay the rent? Or how do I even get to work? My car's broke type of situation. I read a quote I read a fact the other day where it's like 60% of the United States doesn't have $1,000 if something were to happen to their car or something like that. Like, they don't have the means to to fix like a car repair for $1,000. 60% of the United States. That's a lot of people. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a shitload of people. So like, how do you get them engaged? Because without that populace, it seems like it's hard pressed to like once again implement. You could get it done like here, but like where like the people who are spending a lot of their money are going to these places that what also falls in like these food deserts, right? Where they don't have those options. You go to these dollar stores and it's like all like this packaging that's not good for
Yeah.
the earth type of situation. But once again, those consumers, they don't have the option to be like, hey, you know what? I need this in a plastic that's or something.
Yeah.
They're like, yo, I just need to get this done right now, right?
Yeah.
How do you implement? Yeah, how do you
Yeah.
engage with that?
So I guess I have a lot of things running through my head, but I guess one is the waste issue disproportionately impacts those in poverty.
100%.
So landfills are built where people don't have the financial means to
Yeah.
tell them to go.
Yeah, to go
Somewhere
somewhere else.
else.
Yeah, not Mimo, not in my backyard.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Nimbo or whatever.
NIMBY.
NIMBY. Yeah. Not in my backyard. You need to have money to tell
Yeah.
somebody NIMBY.
Yes, incinerators, they go
Yeah.
in places, and those cause health problems for those
100%.
areas, and they smell,
Yeah.
and so I think there's a different motivation potentially for people in other financial situations that we all kind of have to come together. And again, like, it's not fair that we're displacing our waste on other communities. Right now, Miami-Dade is sending most of our trash because our landfills are full up to Okeechobee.
That's
So
crazy.
we're just saying, like, not NIMBY.
Yeah.
We're Miami, we're rich here,
Yeah.
NIMBY.
go over there.
Like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, with people with food deserts, and we need to look at this in a very holistic way. Like, food packaging is one of the main sources of waste.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of incredible groups that are working on alleviating food deserts, and maybe we need to work with those groups more and see how we can unify. And one of the things that I'm most excited that we're working on right now is called Zero Waste Miami, and it's bringing the community together, many different people from many different areas of Miami, because we focus on Miami-Dade County, to get their ideas and get their thoughts and feelings. And no matter, I as an individual don't have all the answers. Like, I don't know what the best thing would be for community A versus community B, because those communities need to figure it out on their own. They know what works for them and what's going to be best. So we're trying to work to bring all of those people to the table so that they can come up with ideas for their communities, and we can help build action strategies around that to essentially, I guess, engage those that, we want to make sure that people who have typically been left out of the conversation are being included in the conversation. Because yes, environmentalism can very quickly turn into a very elitist thing. Like, well, in my condo, when I look out Biscayne Bay, I want to see, and it's much deeper than that. And you have to make sure that a solution works for everyone, because if it's going to work for a small, tiny population,
It's not going to work.
We've seen what's happening right now when the systems are working for a very small piece of the population, and it's not
working.
It's not working.
It's not working. It's working for like a small percentage.
Yes. And so I don't know if that's kind of answering your question, but it's, bringing everyone's voice to the table and making sure everyone has an equal voice, and can express their concerns and how maybe that does or does not work for their community.
Yeah.
And then working with that, like what infrastructural changes might be needed, what cultural changes might be needed, what financial assistance might be needed to make sure that these types of systems can work in many different areas.
I mean, wow. I mean, I hear that. I really hope that we as a society were able to like put those things together and put those pieces together, because I mean, honestly, if everybody's not engaging in the solution, it's never gonna be solved, right? If it's only gonna work like climate change or like all these various things that we're going through right now, it's not only affecting like one class of people, it's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's not one of those situations that where like you're gonna create a bubble around your neighborhood and it's just gonna be it's gonna go away, right? So it really does require engaging with every rung of society. And oftentimes, like you said, the messaging could seem like it's not intended for a certain class of people.
Yeah.
It sounds like that always. It sounds like, believe me, I'm optimistic, but I'm also like a realist, right? So
Yeah.
growing up in the situation where I did, it's like it's a lot of beautiful like pie in the sky you hear, but then
Yeah.
when the pedal, what do they call it? When the metal meets the road or the rubber meets the road, oftentimes certain neighborhoods are forgotten,
Yeah.
right? So here, like we were talking just right now, I had Mario Alejandro Riza on the podcast, and his book Disposable City, and it's all about how Miami and how like certain neighborhoods are gonna be flooded without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing right now, like certain neighborhoods are winning and other ones are losing. So it's gonna be one of those situations where pretty soon here, if we don't figure out like the whole climate change and all of those various things, we're gonna see a big tragedy in the city.
Yeah. I mean, and I would obviously I do not want to see tragedy anywhere. And I guess this is like the eternal optimist in me, but
Yeah.
like oftentimes with tragedy comes the fastest innovation. Like historically, whenever there's a war, that's where we have technological leaps. And so I don't want any sort of tragedy to occur.
Yeah.
But I guess the optimist in me is like,
You see the silver lining?
yes, like I feel like we're getting to a point where we are hitting kind of a tipping point, and technologies are going to start rolling out faster. And I mean technologies both in like, a technology sense like machinery, but technology like logistical operations, ways of thinking about things, different economic systems. Like we have an economic system that is built on infinite growth. And like we live on a finite planet.
Yeah, we have finite resources.
It doesn't align unless you can build within the infinite growth some form of, efficiency in order to build that growth. But it's like we're gonna have to change our systems, and I don't necessarily know what that looks like. But
that sounds crazy. Well, what you're saying right now, I hear what you're saying and I agree with it. But what you're saying in South Florida sounds like they'll call you a communist. All right, 100% just
Right.
comunista, like
Yeah.
Because I mean, capitalism, right? Ultimately, is driven by creating more growth for the shareholder. At the end of the day, all these companies are publicly traded companies, right? And they're making every move with that in mind, right? It's to maximize the shareholder wealth. And nowhere in there is like, oh, the environment. It's more like, it's almost like a psychotic type of thinking where it's like only maximizing regardless of whatever is in the way. We're going to bulldoze it because we need to maximize this growth. And I hear that, I've seen that's been able to give me the opportunity. I'm not gonna lie, like being born and raised in the United States in Miami was like one of the best things that ever happened to me. Right, upward mobility, like AF for me. Like my situation probably would have been hard pressed to happen anywhere else in Latin America or in Central America. Right.
Yeah.
I was born and raised here, and I had the opportunity where like I'm doing things.
Yeah.
And I love that, but at the same time, there has to be limits on that. But who sets the limits? What are the limits? Why limits, right?
It's challenging, and that's one of the reasons why I love B Corps. If you've heard of B Corps,
No.
they're basically
B Corps, yeah. B corporations,
a corporation that obviously has a goal to make profit, but simultaneously they have a mission, and they're allowed to balance those two things rather than solely focusing on the profit.
Yeah, maximizing the shareholder profit.
Yeah, which I feel like is more akin to the vision of capitalism as it began, because again, I'm not an economist, so here I go. But like, from what I understand, back in the day, these corporations were a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
They had a little bit more accountability for their actions.
I mean, yeah.
And there was more competition. So if somebody was doing something effed up, they could go with the other one. But now we're kind of in a situation where there's a lot of monopoly
Yeah.
and, private equity firms owning a lot of different things. And we don't really have that same choice option to push to push companies in the direction that the public feels is the best way.
Okay.
I don't know. That's kind of...
No, I hear you. I agree with you 100% there. It's just, how do you solve that? How do you get over that? Because I feel like that really is what could be the catalyst. Solving that is the catalyst to basically fixing our environment. Because then we're no longer hell-bent on using every resource, right? Like it's not a finite resource to just maximize this profit, this short-term mentality that we're stuck in. I feel like we're in a short-term mentality loop. Mm-hmm. We're only thinking like quarterly, every 3 months, and it's like, yo, we're supposed to live for, like millions of years here. We're supposed to like extend humanity through generations, not like just another year.
Well, I will say in that line, I think it's like kind of around COVID time. So I don't know if things have changed, but I was really excited to see this BlackRock, biggest
hedge fund.
Yeah, like in the world. They made a statement, a few years ago that was basically like all of the companies that they invest in need to meet carbon neutral. I think it was by 2050 or something. Because they basically were saying, at this point, putting investments in companies that aren't doing that, they're actually not an ROI.
Yeah, no.
Because ultimately,
you're going to
go, and then it's like everything's going to crash. So, because that's just... And I feel like that's super important that's being acknowledged in this kind of global, we have the systems we have. We can BS about, we should go and do that. Like, this system, this is what we have. It is. But I think they're recognizing that sustainability doesn't just mean environmental sustainability. It means economic sustainability. The things are hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so I do think there's pressure from that. And that actually gives me hope, even like regardless of nationally, like where we're headed.
Yeah.
Like companies are global, international entities now, and they're seeing that to protect their investments, they do have to protect the resources that those investments depend on. And so that gives me hope as well. Like there's a whole new realm of accounting that deals with internalizing externalities. So externalities are costs that are not already in the bottom line. So externalities are like, I'm going to cut down this tree and I'm going to make, some paper and I pay for the tree and whatever.
Yeah.
The externality that's not considered is, okay, how much CO2, sequestration are you, eliminating, and how much CO2 did you release, and how much water quality damages it going to cause because now there's no absorption of the water, that like all of the many externalities that happen. And so there's actually accounting systems now that are beginning to internalize those costs.
So they're actually having a real like
Yeah.
ROI.
Yeah. So I think on that, I feel like the change is happening on that like big financial level. Very macro that needs to happen. And then we are kind of like a little engine that could driving it on this micro scale. And it's kind of like we need both of those happening simultaneously, where ultimately we will get to a point where change is really possible. But I know one thing for certain, we do nothing will happen.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I hear that. No, I hear that. It's I mean, talking to you gives me hope that there's like that there is actually a way forward. It's just like sometimes it just feels so daunting. Like you just like hear all this messaging where it's super negative and you're just like, man, I hope the aliens show up already. You know what I'm saying? Like, go fix this or so. Or they better invent the most crazy AI ever and fixes this, because I don't see humanity getting together to do much, right, at the current moment. But there's always, organizations like yourselves that are pushing the hope and getting people on board, right, to do the hard things, or at least to talk about the hard things. Maybe not necessarily do them. You, like you said, do one thing. You don't have to do all of the things, but it is encouraging. So like, talk to me about the organization, the nonprofit side of it. How do you go about pushing this message for funding, and how do you go about getting sponsorships and all of that, and getting people on board with your organization?
Yeah, so, we've always had kind of a strategy, which is a little unconventional, of do the right thing and the money will come.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that's worked so far.
That's nice. That's dope.
Integrity and morality is like a big element of who we are.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, money can be shiny and you're like, I'll bend the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
So luckily that has not had to occur. But we have various programming. So one of our big programs right now, I mentioned earlier, is Zero Waste Miami. And we're essentially bringing together businesses, nonprofits, government, individuals, all in Miami-Dade County and outside that want to work in Miami-Dade County, and building a coalition of like-minded people who are aimed towards zero waste. And the goal is essentially finding what we call basically the users. So this would be like schools, restaurants, stadiums, and then the service providers, which would be like reuse service companies, composting companies, recycling companies, and bringing them all together to find, where are the opportunities for collaboration, like where can we implement more composting, where can we implement more recycling, more reuse, and then figure out what challenges are there with implementing those ideas. And working with the government, because the government's been super supportive of all of this. Because
which government?
Miami-Dade County.
Oh, okay.
They've been super supportive of moving towards zero waste.
Yeah.
Mainly because we don't have any landfill space, so they have no choice. And figuring out, okay, then what incentives could we, give? What permitting barriers are there that need to be, dealt with? So we're kind of functioning as this liaison, which we feel can end up bringing a lot of economic opportunity to the area by, fueling these businesses with new ideas. So that's we're really excited about. We have over 100 organizations participating so far.
That's awesome.
And then we have a Chef Andrew Scholar program, which is a mentorship program for college students who want to get into ocean conservation. We train them and they work with us for about 9 months doing educational talks and hosting cleanups and helping us with events, going and speaking at commission meetings, because I feel like it's really important for everyone to learn how to talk to their elected officials. Because I think
Isn't that crazy that there's like jargon to talk to the people who? You should just be like, yo, stop doing this dumb shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, you can, as long as you go through the proper procedure, which even as a lawyer, sometimes I'm like, it's confusing, you know?
I mean, it's made for a reason.
Yeah,
That bureaucracy is made for a reason.
Yeah.
They're trying to stop you from voicing your opinion.
Yeah. So we like to empower people to voice their opinion, teach them how to do that, not make it so, daunting to do. We host tons of events. We've hosted over 500 events in Miami since we started. We just had one last weekend called Miami's Trashiest Singles Event.
Okay.
And essentially we did a capture the flag game meets cleanup of the mangroves, and we brought out Miami singles. We marketed to Miami singles.
Nice.
We have this unofficial matchmaking title, I guess, as an organization. We've had 2 weddings.
Wow.
And 1 engagement that they're getting married this December.
So you're bringing love into
these
it.
These people have met at our events.
Okay.
So we're like, hey, you want to meet, and then we've had people who become roommates or like lifelong friends, or at least 10-year-long friends,
Yeah, 10-year-long friends.
So
it makes sense, because like if they're engaged in those events, then that means that they have more or less the same moral compass.
Yeah.
And like they share same values.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody who's like doesn't care about the earth or anything like that isn't gonna show up to one of those events. So everybody's more or less thinking in the same realm. So that's good. I mean, I would have never thought about that, like bringing those 2 things together, right?
It was fun.
So, yeah, that's dope. That's dope. So you have more of those events coming up? Do you have more of those, like, how do you do this? Do you do it quarterly? How do you figure out like how you engage with the community?
Yeah, we have events all the time. We have actually one coming up February 13th. It's a Valentine's Day, cleanup, and we have another event coming up in a couple of weeks. It's actually one of our Zero Waste Miami. It's our spaghetti social. So the idea is we're going to throw spaghetti at the wall, but also feed everybody spaghetti. And the spaghetti at the wall means ideas. Like, what ideas do you have for your community to go zero waste? So we're really hoping to get people from all over Miami-Dade County. We're hosting it at one of the underlined spots, so it's easily accessible on the Metro Rail. If anyone wants to come and give their ideas, free dinner, free beverages.
That sounds good.
So, yeah. So
and where can people look this up?
If you go to debrisfreeoceans.org, you can see our event calendar. If you go on Eventbrite, you'll see, look up Debris Free Oceans. But we have events all the time and for all different ages. Sometimes, directed a little bit more older, some a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And we do education in schools or for community groups. So if anyone, wants us to come give a talk, or we host cleanups with corporations for them to meet their ESG goals. So those we charge for, but but the corporations could usually pay for it. So if you work for a big company or something like that, and you
want to push your corporation to do a good thing
in the right direction.
direction. Yeah. That's good. So you're like you're able to like match the message with like a good way for people to like, walk the road, right? It's once again, it's hard to like walk that journey if you don't know, like, you want to do it, but at the same time, Netflix is there, right? So it's like it's that type of situation. So you gotta like, I'm currently been saying that like we're completely entrenched in this like TikTok society where it has to be like in 45 seconds or less type of situation.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that. Like you gotta pre-chew things for people now. I mean, I believe that at least, and it seems like your organization is doing that, like putting it in an easy way for them to go do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Think about the environment. If you're single or you're lonely, go find somebody who thinks about the environment with you, right? Mm-hmm. Those type of situations. It's fun. I mean, it's crazy how at the current moment though, the big government, right? The federal government is walking in the complete opposite direction
Yeah.
of like basically all your stated goals.
Yeah.
Right? So do you just like try to ignore that and keep working it in your like with the local government, or yeah, how do you like overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, I like to work in the space that, we feel that we can make a difference in. And, Florida in general has never been a pro regulation state.
Mm-mm.
So our strategy has always been cultural education, voluntary programs. We haven't been pushing so much on the regulatory side because ultimately, especially in a state like Florida, if you get something passed, it may just kind of flip flop.
Just gets watered down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, some may think this is the right or wrong strategy, but we've really taken to just moving forward with the business case and working with companies and showing them that these sustainability practices make sense for your bottom line, and they make, in an actual practical sense, it's the right thing to do morally, but also like economically, it often is the right case as well. So, yeah, we kind of just,
You
I don't want to
circumvent
say
that.
we ignore it,
Yeah.
but right, we're kind of working where that's not really impacting us. The way it is impacting us, though, potentially is with funding, because we are very lucky to have had a few federal grants, and the Zero Waste Miami work that we're working on right now is actually a federal grant.
Wow.
And
So that's like in jeopardy.
that it was a little touch and go over
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks. We were a little nervous. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to
Follow
do that
through, yeah.
project.
Yeah.
We were going to find another way, though.
Yeah, yeah,
we weren't
yeah.
going to let that. We have way too much momentum.
Okay.
But we're good for now.
Okay.
So that's exciting. But, that funding runs up in a year. So I won't be looking to the federal government, I don't think, in the
Yeah.
near future for more funds to do our work. But I don't know, do the right thing and it will come. That's been my strategy. So I feel like
Sheesh, I'm gonna put that in the
It will-
universe. Universe, I've been doing the right thing for a long time, bro. When is it coming, dog? Holla. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, that's the environment we find ourselves in right now. And I just hope that, like, in general, as a society, we like, nos ponemos las pilas. Like, we like start focusing on the things that are real important, right? Like, especially here in South Florida, we're like built on top of porous rock. So it's like water will come right up underneath us. It's not even like it's gonna flood in, right? It's like one of those situations where like it's gonna be very bad if we don't, as collectively, do the right thing, do the things that we have to do. It's just, I mean, once again, it's hard every day to do it. I hear you, but thank you so much for for doing it, right? For like walking the hard walk. It's not easy, and especially like me, like I'm bombarding you with all these pessimistic questions, but like
I'm used to it by now.
I mean, 100%. But I feel like that's the way, really, to like put the message out there. Like, yeah, there's hope, dude. There's hope. There's hope. Like, you can't get hopeless.
Yeah, and especially with the next gen, like you speak to the youth.
They're super anxious about it, though.
They are they are ready to get to work, and so, we are thrilled to be able to help empower them and build them up. And we just finished a program where we trained high school youth around Miami to go and talk to business owners about going plastic free and reducing single-use plastics. And those students, I mean, it changed my life to watch them, and they talked about it like this. It changed their lives.
Yeah.
Like, they were super empowered. They were so nervous at the beginning, and then by the end, they're talking to these owners of companies and advising them on how to help reduce waste, and they're so empowered and ready to go.
Yeah.
Like it's incredible, and there's a lot of them that are really excited about it and want an outlet, an opportunity to get involved, and just showing them the door, they run through it and like blast into outer space. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hope, there. And, a lot of the people in charge right now are older.
Yeah.
So
They're not really gonna see like the outcomes of all these decisions being made right now.
yeah, but it's transitioning. So
I mean, I hope so. I hope that. I mean, I there was this. Who was it? I think it was Tomás Regalado or somebody. One of these like old mayors, and he was in charge of the resilience plan in Miami. And I'm just like, bro, this guy is like 85 years old. What the heck does he care about? What things are gonna be like in 2030 or 2040? Right? It's like. It's not his time's gonna be done. He's gonna be punched the clock already. So it's really the youth who are gonna be dealing with like all of these consequences. So that's why they're so anxious about it, and they really want to try to implement change ASAP. And I completely understand them, right? Like myself being a millennial, it's a weird situation where like I'm at that age now where I'm like, yo, I used to be very fiery about certain things, right? And I'm just like, man, I don't got energy for that right now. Like I got to conserve my energy for certain things now. But they have the energy to like really push that narrative forward and like be able to like try to get people to implement all the various changes that are required for us to like get over this climate change hump, right? Mm-hmm. It's gonna be crazy. Well, once again, the website, what is it?
debrisfreeoceans.org.
And your IG?
Debris Free Oceans.
Debris Free Oceans, straight up.
Yeah.
Anything else where you post or things like that?
Yeah, that's primarily where to get the info. So,
Okay.
And you could join our newsletter. We send a newsletter once a month, and it has all of our upcoming events for the month. So.
And you're open for collaborations with businesses and things like that, right?
Always, yeah. We love, getting involved with more people from the community, and especially as diverse as possible, not necessarily already into sustainability, because it's all about connecting with groups that have not already been a part of the conversation.
Yeah, normally been marginalized. That's huge. That is tremendous. Without that populace, I see it hard pressed for things to move. But thank you so much, Caiti, for coming on, sharing thoughts with me and your organization. And to everybody listening out there, thank you so much for listening. Please share, subscribe. Like I always say, if you like it, share with your friends. And if you hate it, share with your enemies. But just share this, all right? Love y'all. To the next one. We out. Peace.
Thank you.
I want to thank Caiti for coming onto the podcast and sharing her perspective and her views, telling us how they explore the latest ocean conservation and sustainability practices. I really appreciate Caiti and all the hard work that her organization is doing for the future of not only South Florida, but the earth in general. Hasta la próxima, que te crezca. I love you guys. Thank you so much. Share it with me on Que Bola podcast, and we'll get into it, all right? Peace.